A black woman was denied boarding her own private jet, and the pilot was fired instantly when he learned the truth. A woman steps into the luxurious world of private jets, her success evident in every detail. But the pilot, blinded by his assumptions, decides she doesn't belong. His condescending remarks and refusal to fly her set the stage for a confrontation he never saw coming. By the end of this flight, his career and his understanding of respect will take a nosedive. What happens when prejudice meets power? This is a story of resilience, justice, and a lesson delivered at 30,000 feet. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss a single twist. Before we begin, where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments. If you love inspiring stories of resilience and justice, make sure to hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more incredible tales. Your support helps us share these impactful stories with even more people. Now let's get into it. The private jet terminal was alive with quiet luxury. Polished marble floors reflected the soft glow of pendant lights, and the faint hum of engines on the tarmac filled the air. Executives in tailored suits and socialites with designer luggage moved through the space with an effortless air of importance. Amid the elegance, Sophia Langston walked in, her presence commanding attention without a single word. Dressed in a simple yet striking navy blazer and wide-legged trousers, Sophia exuded confidence. Her natural curls framed her face, and her almond-shaped eyes were sharp yet warm. She carried no flashy accessories, just a sleek leather carry-on and a tablet in hand. For Sophia, subtlety was her power. Her success didn't need loud announcements. She approached the check-in desk, where a young woman with a polished uniform and an eager smile greeted her. "Good morning, ma'am. May I assist you?" the woman asked, her voice pleasant and professional. "Yes, thank you," Sophia replied, her tone measured. "I'm here for the Langston flight to Geneva." The woman's eyes flicked to her screen. "Of course, Miss Langston. Everything is in order. Your jet is being prepared and the captain will meet you shortly." Sophia gave a small nod and stepped aside, letting her gaze wander over the terminal. Her flight was crucial, not just for her, but for the team awaiting her arrival overseas. This meeting could solidify a partnership that would expand her luxury goods company into Europe, a move she'd worked tirelessly for. She didn't have to wait long. From across the terminal, a man in a crisp pilot's uniform approached. His shoulders were broad, his steps confident, but his expression was guarded. Captain Todd Benson was the image of professionalism at first glance, but something in his eyes betrayed him, a flicker of disdain, subtle but unmistakable. Sophia turned as he reached her. "Captain Benson, I presume," she said, extending a hand. Todd glanced at her hand briefly before clasping it. His grip was firm, bordering on dismissive. "Miss Langston, I take it," he said, his voice carrying a veneer of politeness, but the way he scanned her from head to toe suggested otherwise. Sophia caught it immediately, the narrowing of his eyes, the slight curl at the corner of his mouth. She had seen this look before. "That's correct," Sophia replied, her tone unwavering. She didn't miss a beat. "I trust everything is ready for our departure." Todd hesitated, glancing at the check-in clerk as if to confirm her words. Yes, though I must say we don't often see private clients such as yourself." The words hung in the air, each syllable dripping with implication. Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Clients, such as myself?" she repeated, her voice calm, but laced with an edge. Todd shrugged, a smirk playing on his lips. "You know, it's just uncommon. Most of our private jet owners are, well, they're a little different." Sophia held his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Different how?" "Well, no offense, but people in this space usually have a certain background," Todd said, avoiding her eyes. "It's not typical to see someone—" He trailed off, but the meaning was clear. The check-in clerk froze, her polite smile faltering as the tension thickened. Sophia remained composed, but a flicker of something colder passed through her eyes. "I see," she said finally. "And you base that observation on what, exactly?" Todd shifted on his feet, realizing too late that he had stepped into dangerous territory. "Oh, I didn't mean anything by it. It's just, well, I wasn't expecting the jet owner to be present." Sophia crossed her arms. "Captain Benson, let's be clear. I am not only present, but I am also the sole owner of this aircraft. Now, if there's an issue, I suggest you state it plainly." Todd's smirk vanished, replaced by a tight-lipped expression. "No issue," he muttered, though his tone suggested otherwise. "I'll get the pre-flight checks done." As he turned to walk away, Sophia's voice stopped him. "Captain," she said firmly. He paused, glancing back. "Be sure you're fully prepared," she continued evenly. "I have no tolerance for unprofessionalism." Her words hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown. Todd's jaw tightened, but he nodded stiffly and walked away. Sophia exhaled softly, her grip tightening on her carry-on. This wasn't the first time her presence had been questioned, and she doubted it would be the last. But today, of all days, she wouldn't let ignorance and prejudice derail her plans. She glanced at her watch. The jet would be ready soon, and, with it, another battle would unfold, one she was determined to win. Sophia made her way to the private lounge, her heels clicking against the pristine marble floors with deliberate precision. The space was an oasis of tranquility, designed to cater to the ultra-wealthy who valued discretion above all else. Plush leather seating, subtle ambient lighting, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee created an air of exclusivity. But today, for Sophia, the luxurious surroundings felt like a veneer over something much uglier. Settling into a chair by the window, she placed her carry-on beside her and took out her tablet. As her finger hovered over the screen, reviewing the final presentation, for her meeting in Geneva, her mind remained partially tethered to the unsettling encounter with Captain Benson. Her career had taught her how to spot prejudice the moment it reared its head. It wasn't always loud or overt. It didn't have to be. Sometimes it hid in condescending glances, in loaded comments disguised as politeness, or in the hesitation before a handshake. Todd Benson had been no different. His subtle derision spoke volumes, and Sophia knew it was only the beginning. The attendant who had greeted her earlier approached quietly, her smile still intact, but her demeanor tinged with unease. "Miss Langston," she said softly, her hands clasped in front of her. "Can I offer you anything while you wait? Coffee, tea, perhaps a glass of water?" Sophia looked up from her tablet, her expression softening as she registered the young woman's nervousness. Coffee would be lovely, thank you," she replied, her voice gentle. The attendant nodded and turned to leave, but Sophia called out, "Excuse me, what's your name?" The woman stopped, a little startled, then smiled shyly. "It's Clara, ma'am." "Thank you, Clara," Sophia said, her tone warm. "I appreciate your professionalism." Clara's face lit up, her shoulders visibly relaxing. "Of course, ma'am. I'll bring your coffee right away." As Clara disappeared into the adjoining kitchenette, Sophia's gaze drifted back to the tarmac outside the window. The jet was a sleek marvel of engineering, its metallic exterior gleaming in the sunlight. It was hers, every inch, every detail, a testament to her hard work and determination. She had poured years into building her company from the ground up, fighting through obstacles and skepticism to stand where she did today. And yet, here she was, still needing to prove her place. Her phone buzzed on the table, interrupting her thoughts. She picked it up to see the name Leonard Hayes flashing on the screen. A faint smile tugged at her lips as she answered. "Leonard," she greeted him. "I assume you're calling with good news?" Leonard's deep, jovial voice came through the line. "Always, Sophia. Just wanted to confirm that everything's in place for the Geneva meeting. The partners are eager to see what you have to offer." "They won't be disappointed," Sophia said confidently, though a shadow of irritation crossed her mind as she thought of Todd Benson. "But I may have to handle a small complication before we take off." There was a brief pause on Leonard's end. "Complication?" he asked, his tone shifting to one of concern. "What kind of complication?" Sophia leaned back in her chair, her gaze fixed on the jet outside. "Let's just say our captain has some preconceived notions about who belongs in this terminal." Leonard sighed heavily. "Do you want me to handle it?" "No," Sophia said firmly. "I can manage, but I may need you to back me up if it escalates." "Always," Leonard replied without hesitation. "Just say the word." "Thank you, Leonard," Sophia said, her voice softening. "I'll keep you updated." After ending the call, she placed her phone down and stared out at the jet again. The aircraft, an embodiment of her achievements, suddenly felt like a battleground. But Sophia wasn't one to shy away from a fight, especially not when it came to defending her place in a world that often underestimated her. Clara returned moments later, carefully balancing a tray with a steaming cup of coffee and a small dish of sugar cubes. "Here you go, Mum," she said, setting it down on the table with practiced grace. "Thank you, Clara," Sophia said, offering her a small smile. As Clara turned to leave, Sophia added, "And Clara?" "Yes, Mum," she replied, glancing back. "If there's ever a situation where someone questions your worth or your place, don't let them intimidate you. Understand?" Clara blinked, a mix of surprise and gratitude flashing across her face. "I will, Mum, thank you." Sophia watched her leave, her words lingering in the air. She took a sip of her coffee, letting its warmth steady her resolve. Todd Benson's attitude wasn't just about her, it was a reflection of a much larger issue, one she had encountered time and again. But today she wouldn't let it go unanswered. Minutes later, a commotion at the far end of the lounge drew her attention. Todd had returned, his expression stern as he spoke to another uniformed staff member. Sophia couldn't hear their words, but the tension was palpable. The staff member looked uneasy, nodding hurriedly as Todd gestured toward the jet. Sophia placed her cup down and stood, smoothing the fabric of her blazer. It was time to confront the storm head-on. She walked toward Todd with measured steps, her every movement deliberate and composed. As she approached, Todd turned, his expression darkening when he saw her. "Miss Langston," he said, his tone clipped. "I was just making final preparations for the flight." Sophia tilted her head slightly, studying him with a calm intensity. "I see. And do these preparations include questioning my authority as the owner of this aircraft?" Todd stiffened, his jaw tightening. "I don't know what you mean." Sophia stepped closer, her voice dropping to a level that demanded attention. "Oh, I think you do, Captain Benson. And I suggest you think carefully about your next words, because how you proceed will determine whether or not you're still employed by the time this jet leaves the tarmac." For the first time, Todd faltered. The confidence he had worn like armor cracked, and uncertainty seeped through. Sophia held his gaze unflinching. The battle had begun, and she had no intention of losing. Todd stood frozen for a moment, his expression shifting between indignation and unease. The smooth confidence he had carried earlier now appeared brittle, under the weight of Sophia's words. Behind him, the other staff member, likely another crew member, Sophia stood firm, her unwavering stance exuding authority as she addressed the situation. Her calm and steady voice carried a weight that left no room for negotiation. She had encountered men like Todd before, those who mistook privilege for power and entitlement for competence. The atmosphere grew tense, the silence thick and heavy. As Todd finally broke it, with a tone laced with irritation, he attempted to justify his actions, framing them as a commitment to safety and integrity. However, Sophia interrupted him, asserting that his behavior had nothing to do with either. She made it clear that his objections stemmed from his inability to accept her ownership of the jet. Her words, firm yet controlled, left no room for rebuttal. She highlighted that all necessary documentation had been provided and that any legitimate concerns should have been addressed professionally rather than through dismissive remarks and veiled insults. The tension escalated as the other staff member stepped back, visibly uncomfortable, while Todd's face reddened with frustration. He tried to defend himself, claiming he treated all clients with respect. Sophia countered his claim, questioning his definition of respect, pointing out his condescending comments about her background and refusal to believe she belonged there. Her words struck a chord, leaving Todd visibly flustered. He glanced around, seemingly searching for support, but the terminal staff maintained their distance, avoiding eye contact. The lounge grew quieter, the earlier hum of activity replaced by a tense stillness, as onlookers took notice of the exchange. Todd muttered a defensive remark about following protocol, insisting there was no need to make the situation personal. Sophia, calm yet commanding, closed the gap between them, her presence magnetic and unnerving. She declared that it had become personal the moment Todd judged her, based on preconceived notions of who should own a private jet. She made it clear that she would not tolerate being treated as less than anyone else. Todd's confidence wavered briefly, but he quickly regained his composure, adopting a formal tone to assure her that the situation was a misunderstanding and promising to ensure the flight proceeded smoothly. Sophia scrutinized him for a moment, her sharp gaze cutting through his facade of forced politeness. She acknowledged his assurance, but firmly stated that she would report the incident to his superiors, warning him that it would not be dismissed as a simple misunderstanding. Todd, his jaw tightening, nodded curtly in acknowledgement. With measured strides, Sophia returned to her seat in the lounge, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. Though she had made her point, the tension lingered, a palpable reminder of the confrontation. Simmering beneath the surface, the tension remained unresolved as Sophia returned to her seat and picked up her tablet. Her focus, however, had shifted entirely. Her mind raced, replaying the encounter with Todd and analyzing every detail. The pilot's hostility wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a broader issue Sophia had faced countless times before. She sipped her now lukewarm coffee, her thoughts churning. Her phone buzzed, breaking her concentration. It was a text from Leonard. "Everything okay? Want me to step in?" Sophia smiled faintly at the message, appreciating his support. She quickly typed a reply, assuring him she had handled the situation for now but asking him to stay close in case things escalated. Leonard's response was immediate, offering his unwavering support. Setting her phone down, Sophia exhaled deeply, centering herself. She couldn't let Todd's behavior distract her from the bigger picture. The deal in Geneva was a milestone for her company, and she intended to arrive focused and unshaken. Nearby, Claire stood by the kitchenette, discreetly observing the aftermath. She had caught fragments of Sophia's exchange with Todd and felt her admiration for the jet owner grow. Claire had seen her fair share of entitled passengers and tense situations, but Sophia's composure and strength were unmatched. As she wiped down the counter, Claire noticed Todd speaking in hushed tones with another crew member near the gate. His body language was tense, his gestures sharp and erratic. Though Claire couldn't hear their words, the uneasy expression on the crew member's face spoke volumes. A sinking feeling settled in her chest. Todd wasn't done causing trouble. Sophia, though calm and collected in appearance, was acutely aware of Todd's lingering presence. She knew men like him rarely accepted defeat gracefully. Her coffee remained untouched as she tapped out an email to the CEO of the aviation company. Her message was precise and professional, detailing the incident with Todd. She avoided emotional language, focusing on the facts: her ownership of the jet, Todd's dismissive behavior, and the broader implications of his actions. For Sophia, this wasn't just about her, it was about accountability. Hitting send, a quiet determination settled over her. Todd Benson didn't realize it yet, but the battle he had started would cost him far more than his pride. Justice, she thought, had a way of catching up with those who underestimated the wrong person. The lounge remained hushed as Sophia sat in her chair, her tablet resting untouched on her lap. The coffee beside her had grown cold, its faint aroma a reminder of the time that had passed. Outside, her private jet shimmered under the late morning sun, a testament to her hard-earned success. But inside the terminal, a storm was brewing. She didn't need to look up to know Todd was still nearby. His resentment lingered in the air, heavy and oppressive like a distant rumble of thunder before a storm. Sophia's patience, while vast, was not infinite. She had given Todd a chance to correct his course. Now she waited, resolute, for what would come next. Sophia waited, observing if Todd would take the chance to reconsider or dig himself deeper into the mess he was creating. Her phone buzzed on the table, and she glanced at the screen to see a message from Leonard asking for updates and offering to step in. She quickly typed a response, assuring him that there was no need yet, but advising him to remain on standby. Placing the phone back on the table, her eyes drifted toward the window where her jet gleamed under the endless blue sky. Its sleek design and powerful presence were symbols of her hard-earned success, and no prejudice or ignorance could diminish that. Meanwhile, near the gate, Todd stood with a younger crew member, speaking in hushed but tense tones. The younger man appeared nervous, his glances frequently darting toward the lounge where Sophia sat. Todd dismissed the documentation and insinuated that it could be forged, expressing doubt that someone like Sophia could own a jet like that. Despite the younger man's attempt to reason with him, referencing Leonard Hayes's endorsement, Todd refused to back down. His words were laced with bias, as he insisted she didn't fit the profile of someone who could own such an asset. The younger man's unease grew, and he hesitated before softly suggesting that perhaps she had earned it, but Todd scoffed at the idea, dismissing it with a hardened expression. From her position by the kitchenette, Claire observed the interaction, with growing apprehension. She had heard enough to understand Todd's intentions, and a knot of unease formed in her stomach. It was clear he was determined not to let the matter drop, and his prejudice was becoming more evident with every word. Claire's gaze shifted towards Sophia, who remained poised and composed, seemingly unaffected by the growing whispers behind her back. The grace and strength Sophia had demonstrated earlier left a deep impression on Claire, but it also stirred feelings of guilt. Claire felt powerless in her role, but couldn't shake the sense that this situation was about more than a procedural dispute. It was about fairness and respect, principles she knew she couldn't ignore. Sophia's attention returned to the room as Todd approached her again, his steps purposeful and his expression tight with frustration. She set her tablet aside and straightened her posture, meeting his gaze with unwavering clarity. Todd, his tone clipped, began speaking about his lingering concerns, but she raised a hand to stop him mid-sentence, her calm authority silencing him instantly. A hand rose, silencing Todd mid-sentence. "Stop," Sophia said firmly, her voice steady but weighted with authority. Todd faltered as her words cut through the tension. "We've already had this conversation, Captain Benson. I'm not going to entertain it further." He attempted to interject, but her tone sharpened, silencing him again. "No," she said. "You've made your assumptions, voiced your doubts, and wasted enough of my time. I've been more than patient, but this ends here." Todd's face flushed, his confidence wavering. Sophia didn't give him the chance to respond. She stood, her presence commanding despite her average height. Her unwavering gaze bore into him as she spoke. "This jet is mine. I earned it through years of hard work, resilience, and determination. Let me remind you, Captain, that your role here is to serve as a pilot, not as a gatekeeper deciding who deserves to fly." Todd opened his mouth but closed it again, his resolve crumbling under her piercing stare. Sophia stepped closer, her voice calm yet undeniably commanding. "If you cannot accept that, I will ensure you are replaced before this flight even begins. And make no mistake, Captain, your behavior will be documented in full and forwarded to the highest levels of your company. Do you understand me?" The color drained from Todd's face as the gravity of her words sank in. "Yes, ma'am," he muttered, his voice barely audible. Sophia held his gaze a moment longer, then stepped back, her expression unreadable. "Good. Now I suggest you focus on preparing for takeoff." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked away, her steps measured and purposeful. Behind her, Todd remained frozen, his bravado shattered, the future of his career dangling by a thread. Back in her seat, Sophia exhaled quietly, allowing herself a brief moment of relief. The confrontation had been handled, but its weight lingered. Encounters like these, though all too familiar, were never easy. Each one left its mark, chipping away at something deeper, forcing her to fight battles she shouldn't have to fight. Minutes later, Claire approached hesitantly, her face pale but determined. "Miss Langston," she said quietly, her voice low and trembling. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what happened. You didn't deserve that." Sophia looked up, her expression softening as she met Claire's gaze. "Thank you, Claire," she said warmly. "But don't apologize for someone else's ignorance. Just promise me one thing." Claire nodded, her eyes wide. "Anything. Never let someone else's prejudice define you," Sophia said. "You're worth more than that." Claire swallowed hard, her admiration for Sophia deepening. "I promise," she said softly. Sophia offered a small, reassuring smile before turning her attention back to the window. The jet gleamed under the sun, ready for takeoff. For Sophia, it wasn't just a machine. It was a symbol of her resilience, a testament to rising above barriers and achieving what others thought impossible. Across the lounge, quiet returned. The clinking of glasses and soft hum of conversation filled the air, though the earlier tension lingered beneath the surface. Sophia remained seated, her posture relaxed, but her mind alert. Her gaze drifted to the jet outside, its polished exterior, reflecting the sunlight. Near the gate, Todd stood apart from the rest of the crew, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His stance was rigid, his face etched with frustration. Though he had reluctantly conceded the earlier confrontation, the sting of it still burned. His pride was bruised, and his rigid posture betrayed his internal struggle to process the events that had unfolded. A crew member cautiously approached Todd, his demeanor hesitant. He spoke quietly, as though afraid of being overheard, suggesting that Todd should consider letting the matter go. Todd's eyes snapped toward him, sharp with unspoken anger. Letting it go was clearly not an option for him. He hissed his frustration, questioning if the younger man even understood what this situation looked like and how it reflected on him. The crew member hesitated, carefully considering his response, before pointing out that Todd's actions made him seem unprofessional. He added that, while he didn't know Miss Langston personally, everything about her presence indicated legitimacy, and she wasn't someone to dismiss lightly. Todd pressed his lips into a tight line, muttering that it wasn't about legitimacy. The younger man gave him a pointed look, questioning whether it really wasn't. Before Todd could respond, their tense exchange was interrupted by a terminal staff member. She addressed Todd crisply, informing him that the client had requested the final pre-flight checklist and asking if he was prepared to proceed. Todd's expression tightened further, and for a moment it seemed he might argue. After a brief pause, he gave a curt nod, agreeing to handle it. As the staff member walked away, Todd muttered bitterly under his breath, his tone sharp and filled with resentment. His quiet words hinted at his unwillingness to let the situation go, leaving the younger crew member uneasy and silent. Meanwhile, back in the lounge, Sophia's phone buzzed with a new notification. This time it wasn't Leonard, but an email from the CEO of the aviation company. The message addressed her concerns and assured her that the matter was being taken seriously. It stated that Captain Benson's actions would be thoroughly investigated, and appropriate measures would be taken to ensure no such behavior would be repeated. The CEO also emphasized that her comfort and satisfaction were top priorities, inviting her to reach out directly should further issues arise. Sophia read the email twice, allowing herself a faint smile. She appreciated the swift response, but she knew words alone weren't enough. She resolved to see the matter through, understanding that meaningful actions were what truly counted. A few minutes later, a terminal attendant approached Sophia with polite nervousness, informing her that her jet was ready for boarding and offering to escort her to the gate. Sophia nodded, rising gracefully and collecting her carry-on. As she made her way to the gate, her gaze fell on Todd, who stood near the jet stairs. His posture was rigid, his expression unreadable, yet the tension in his demeanor was palpable. Though outwardly composed, Sophia could sense the simmering hostility lingering in the air. Sophia approached the jet, her steps deliberate and composed, as Todd stood stiffly by the stairs, his stormy expression betraying his unresolved frustration. She stopped in front of him, her voice calm yet commanding, and asked if they were ready to proceed. Todd's jaw tightened, his reluctance visible, but he gave a curt nod and confirmed the jet was ready. Without missing a beat, Sophia gestured toward the stairs, silently instructing him to go first. Todd hesitated, clearly resenting the gesture, but with no choice. He climbed the stairs, his movements rigid. Following behind him, Sophia remained composed, her unreadable expression giving nothing away. Inside the jet, the luxurious cabin exuded calm, its serene ambience a sharp contrast to the tension still simmering. Todd quickly disappeared into the cockpit, leaving Sophia to settle into her seat. The engines roared to life as the plane began its taxi, and Sophia allowed herself a moment of reflection. The confrontation earlier had concluded in her favor, but it lingered in her mind, not as a triumph but as a stark reminder of the work still ahead. Moments like these were battles she shouldn't have to fight, yet they persisted. As the jet lifted off the ground, the weight of the morning began to ease. Sophia gazed out the window at the endless stretch of blue sky, watching as the clouds parted below. It was a powerful reminder of what she had achieved and the barriers she continued to break. Every rivet and wing of the jet symbolized her resilience, her years of hard work, and her refusal to be defined by others' limited perceptions. The jet leveled off at cruising altitude, its engines humming softly in the background. Sophia, seated by the window, sipped from a glass of sparkling water, her thoughts shifting between the past and the future. This trip to Geneva was more than a business venture. It was a statement, proof that she belonged in spaces where others might doubt her. Her phone vibrated softly beside her, displaying a familiar name, Leonard Hayes. Answering it, Sophia greeted him warmly, and Leonard immediately inquired about the situation. She recounted the morning's events in detail, her voice calm but measured, her mind steady as she reflected on how she had confronted Todd and asserted her rightful place. The conversation with Leonard brought some relief, his steady support a reminder that she wasn't alone in her battles. Yet as she ended the call, Sophia's determination only grew. This wasn't just about her, it was about ensuring that no one else would have to face the same prejudice. As the jet soared higher into the sky, Sophia leaned back in her seat, watching the endless expanse of blue and feeling the quiet power of possibility. Justice, she knew, had a way of catching up to those who underestimated the wrong person. As Sophia detailed Todd's behavior and their confrontation, Leonard listened intently, his occasional hum of disapproval the only indication of his thoughts. When she finished, he exhaled deeply, his frustration evident even through the call. Sophia, however, remained composed. She explained her plans to ensure Todd was held accountable, her voice firm and resolute. Looking out the window at the endless stretch of sky, she felt the weight of responsibility, not just for herself but for others, who faced the same barriers. As their conversation ended, Sophia set her phone aside, her focus returning to the moment.